It's Thursday, August 21st, and today on Game Rant, we can confirm we are mere weeks away from the release of Hollow Knight Silksong. Yes, you heard that right. The PlayStation 5 console lineup has seen a sudden price increase, and it's starting to look like Halloween as IllFonic has announced their next multiplayer horror game. And that means we're kicking it to a quick news blast. During this week's Gamescom event, several news outlets and influencers were given hands-on with the Switch 2 version of Elden Ring, and the results were universally panned. Of course, this is a preview for a work in progress, but sources claim this version of the 2022 game was falling to an eye-watering 15 frames per second. We've got ourselves an Xbox Game Pass twofer. Following its surprise console launch is the Rogue Prince of Persia by Evil Empire, known as some of the developers behind fan-favorite Dead Cells, and they bring a lot of those mechanics here. This game is also available on PS Plus Extra, and the second is Herdling, a game which truly lives up to its title as it sees players attempting to navigate the unwieldy forces of nature while herding their pack in tow. Both games are available on Game Pass Ultimate right now. Take-Two Interactive has submitted a Digital Millennium Copyright Act notice against 2 mods for their published game Mafia: The Old Country, both of which allowed players to experience the world and story of the Old Country, except no one was wearing any clothes. Of course, these mods were only available for the PC version before being taken down. And Tropico 7, the latest in the dictatorship simulator, has been revealed and is set to launch sometime next year. While few details were shared, the trailer showed the familiar El Presidente boasting this game will be bigger than ever, including moving physical mountains thanks to his own unique cult of personality. No date was given beyond 2026, but we do know it will arrive on Game Pass Ultimate Day 1. Hell Let Loose, a merger of first-person shooter with the overarching mission structure of a strategy game, will be heading to Vietnam in its next entry. In the pre-rendered trailer, we can see numerous images of the Vietnam conflict, including swift boats, brutal ambushes, and burning villages. We'll find out more when the game launches sometime in 2026. And now on to our first major story today. The price of PlayStation 5 consoles has jumped by $50 in the United States, meaning the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, regular PlayStation 5, and PlayStation 5 Pro will now be priced at $499.99, $549.99, and $749.99. This is notable for several reasons, namely consoles are traditionally set in a fixed price, which comes down over time as product adoption increases and parts become cheaper through revised models. That certainly hasn't been the case with this generation, as last spring Microsoft revealed price increases for their Xbox brand of consoles. Now the first question you might have is why, and to that Sony gave little explanation beyond a vague reference to a challenging economic environment, passing the blame to external forces, but of course without citing their specific reason. The obvious influencing factor is the ongoing trade war between the United States and several other nations, who have supplied North America with cheap parts and electronics, starting with an increase in trade in the late 1970s. To reduce dependency on other countries, the American government recently began a string of tariffs, essentially a tax on imported product to encourage domestic manufacturing. But in the meantime, it appears console manufacturers will simply adjust the price. But now rolling into their 5th year on the market, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox brands, and even the original Nintendo Switch 1 have done the unprecedented, with their consoles costing more at retail than they did several years before. What do you think this means for the next generation of Xbox and PlayStation consoles pricing? Chat back in the comments below. Just remember, be nice. The grandfather of the slasher genre, Michael Myers, has been a fairly constant presence in video games over the past few years, being given several cameos in the Call of Duty franchise as well as the ever-popular Fortnite, and perhaps most fittingly the Dead by Daylight multiplayer survival game. Well, it looks like Mr. Myers is taking his rusty knife into full-time stabbing, with a brand new Halloween game coming in 2026 from Gun Interactive, but most notably was the tease of a single-player experience in addition to the expected multiplayer mode. And perhaps most promising is the involvement of the director John Carpenter, recognized as one of the most influential filmmakers of his generation. Many of his creations went on to inspire early video games, becoming long-held traditions. But since his retirement, he spent many of his years playing video games himself as a hardcore gamer. Yes, really. In the trailer, we can hear the familiar monologue of the tortured Dr. Loomis pleading for the end of Michael Myers and proclaiming him to be unhuman as a frightened group escapes their home to run into a suburban neighborhood. No word on if this exact location will be in the game, but the developers have promised multiple maps will be DLC available. What Halloween references do you want to see in the game? Mark me down for that catchy Silver Shamrock song from Part 3. Bloomberg's Jason Schreier is reporting the developers of the next BioShock game are suffering layoffs. According to his article, around a third of the Cloud Chamber's staff were dismissed, estimating that number based on previous team sizes to be around 80 employees. The reasons were twofold. On the one hand, BioShock was delayed beyond 2026, giving developers more time to refine their work. On the other hand, the alleged development of BioShock has been uniquely sluggish over multiple years. And this is where news of Rod Ferguson's recent hire begins to make more sense. While an accomplished creator in his own right, Mr. Ferguson has often been described within the industry as a fixer or a manager with the skill to revamp already created work. In fact, it was his 2-year tenure at 2K Games which is credited with the final wrap-up for 2013's BioShock Infinite, the third and so far final game in the franchise's history. But with a new boss as well as the significant loss of their colleagues, we're sure to hear more about Cloud Chamber in the near future. What would you want in the next BioShock? Chat back in the comments below. And now on to our main story and one of the most anticipated games in recent history. After a prolonged several-year development, we can confirm Hollow Knight Silksong will be released on September 4th. Yes, that's right, in a mere 14 days, Hollow Knight Silksong will release on the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo Switch 2, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox, as well as Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and PC platforms Steam, GOG, and Humble Bundle. Currently, Hollow Knight Silksong is being played on the show floor of this year's Gamescom event in Cologne, Germany, and so far the reception has been positive, noting the events were identical to the previous demo but with a smoother overall experience. Developer Team Cherry also updated their YouTube page for the first time in 6 years with the newest trailer revealing the release date in dramatic fashion. And if somehow you missed the hype, well, let's catch you up to speed. Hollow Knight was released in 2017 and quickly became one of the most admired Metroidvania of its era with high combat demands and user-friendly aesthetic that communicated mechanics. In short, it was a hit, and it didn't take long for Team Cherry to produce well-received DLC in semi-annual order. Or at least that was the case until their Silksong DLC spiraled into a standalone game, not only in terms of expansive map and expressive combat, but for the general feel and nuance required of a Metroidvania. And the most surprising detail of all, we'll find out firsthand when the game launches 2 weeks from today. Over 6.5 years since Team Cherry first released their Silksong trailer on YouTube. Of course, the memes and well wishes are pouring in the comments after 4.5 million views. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video, but we'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, why not check out Ryan Evans' latest all about Black Myth Wukong and what it's like a year later and the updates it's received. Link in the description below. Keep clicking around here at Game Rant, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.